Friday I was driving up from Atlanta after some fights. I put on the YouTubes, because not only do I put things on YouTube, but I also like to consume a lot of YouTube. And of course, some things I consume is boxing. Saw this come up. This is a really cool thumbnail, and I had that on my playlist to listen to. It's a very enticing title. Every professional boxer who had rules made to stop them. Man, that sounds juicy. And I know the power of titles is important. So let's go through, though, because I was a little bit disturbed. I was actually pretty disturbed listening to it on my drive up because there's enough misinformation out there. I don't need people to be even more misinformed about boxing history. And again, don't get me wrong. I'm sure the Explainer Boxing, which is the YouTube channel name, the Explainer Boxer, I'm sure he's a fine person. It sounds like it's maybe AI voice. I don't know. He's in Australia. And I've said things wrong before. I used to say that the last 15-round fight was Boom Boom Mancini versus Dooku Kim. That's not true. There were other ones later. And then, of course, it was the result of that led to the change from my understanding. But let's go through and check out this list. Cool thumbnail. Weird that he has a weird AI, Sugar Ray Leonard there. But let's go through the list. I think Sugar Ray Leonard's the only AI. Yeah. All right, let's go through the list. This is Coach Keith Keppner, a professional amateur boxing coach for going on 15 plus years. Not only did I box in the United States and Mexico, and I've taken guys from complete beginners to elite levels in boxing, but also I was mentored by my father, who's a professional boxing coach, for multiple decades. So that's where I was exposed to a lot of this history of boxing. Became a student of the history. And then his mentor was Chuck Bodak, who worked with over 50 world champions, and he was the Olympic coach for Muhammad Ali. Let's get into it and have some fun. And again, it sounds almost like this was done by AI, like the whole thing, but I don't know. Let's check it out.
Mike Tyson and the infamous ear bite. Now, if we're being honest, who doesn't know Mike Tyson? He was known as the Angry Beast in the ring, a powerhouse known all over the world for his raw aggression and knockout power. Everyone knew Tyson could be furious in the ring. 1997, during one of the most talked about fights in boxing history against Evander Holyfield, things took a dramatic and shocking
Yeah, he bit his ear off, okay?
The match was already tense, and Tyson was visibly angry, feeling that Holyfield was using his head unfairly during close exchanges. He believed the ref was a
little bit of boxing history that it's funny how many people don't realize this that I talk to that follow modern boxing. Holyfield TKO'd him in the first fight. Probably the same thing would happen in the second fight.
Ignoring the fouls, and instead of staying calm and focused, Tyson completely lost control. In a moment that stunned everyone watching, he bit Holyfield's ear. Now,
I actually watched that fight live. I was pretty young and hadn't watched a lot of boxing fights, and that was a real what the F moment. My wife, actually, who went on to fight a bunch in a lot of different disciplines, actually, including boxing, that was actually the first boxing fight she ever watched, and it was like, what the hell is this crap?
First, people couldn't believe what they were seeing,
Right.
but then it happened again, and Tyson bit Holyfield a second time and actually tore off a piece of his ear. It was one of the most unexpected and disturbing moments ever seen in a boxing ring. The fight was immediately stopped. This incident led boxing authorities to take a hard look at how fights were managed. New rules were introduced.
Okay, so new rules were introduced. See, this is what starts to bother me about this video. Okay, the recap, completely accurate up until this point. New rules were introduced. Okay? Words mean things. If you don't think words mean things, you can go, you can go off somewhere. Just do your thing by yourself and not talk to other people because words do mean things. All right. You got a picture of LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, signing something, a president signing something from the 60s. Okay. Great. Yeah. What rules were changed?
Making it clear that if a boxer commits a serious foul intentionally, like something as extreme as what Tyson did, the fight can be ended right away without any second chances.
Okay, so that's a new rule that was introduced. All right, so if you were to watch this video, you'd walk away from it if you didn't know much about boxing and hadn't been around boxing very much, or for a very long time, you'd be like, new rules were introduced because of Mike Tyson. Now you're going to go talking and saying this and thinking this because of this video.
There was also a renewed focus on fighter safety as boxers were required to use better mouth protection.
Oh, so they were required to use better mouth protection because of the Mike Tyson fight against Evander Holyfield? I can tell you for a fact that is not the case. 100%. Like, absolutely. Same mouth guard could be used before and could be used afterwards. Nothing changed with mouth guard requirements.
and referees and ringside officials were given more power and support to stop a fight immediately if someone clearly wasn't following the rules. Tyson's outburst didn't just damage his own legacy, but it made fans, officials, and fighters realize that more needed to be done to ensure safety in the ring. After this, boxing as a whole became more cautious, and rules became stricter to prevent anything like that from happening again.
Okay, so rules became stricter. Obviously, this whole video was probably written with AI. So it's kind of ridiculous me going into AI to fact check it. But AI is a good source as like a Google search in a sense, which doesn't mean it's all completely 100% correct. Feel free, guys. Anything that you feel I get wrong and you feel you have better evidence for, please comment below, because I'm not trying to say I'm the end all be all source of boxing knowledge or whatever. Okay. So it's funny, when I asked AI about this, it starts off saying the same thing this video says. And then when I pressure AI, give it a little pushback, then it starts actually telling the truth. You know, I had to smack it around a little bit. All right. So I said, are there any boxing rules changed because of Mike Tyson? It says yes. Mike Tyson's career did lead to some boxing rule changes and enforcement shifts. Okay. So what? All right. So ringside security, it says clearer rules about disqualification and penalties for unsportsmanlike behavior. Drug screening, clothing and glove inspection, controversial fights emphasize a pre-fight glove inspection, and boxing tire regulations to avoid cheating or illegal tactics. Name the source. I'm not even going to get into it with AI on all these things, but let's stick to the premise of the point that Boxing Explainer, I don't feel he did a very good job of explaining this, explained. While Mike Tyson didn't cause fundamental changes like round limits or major safety reforms, highly publicized behavior and controversial led to tighter enforcements of rules and fouls and disqualifications. So maybe tighter enforcement. All right, and then I say, show me the exact rule in the rule book that was changed. Oh, well, wait, there are no specific formal codified rule changes in major rule books like the Association of Boxing Commissions, ABC. You should go look that up, guys, online and read that through, because it's a good thing to read through if you are serious about boxing, professional boxing. So, for example, biting is listed as a foul and can lead to disqualification. And that was already established before Mike Tyson, because guess what? Believe it or not, people actually bit each other in the ring before Mike Tyson, right? But if you live on the online world of Reddit forums or whatever, you might think that that's the only place that you would ever think that. And then I say, so nothing changed, correct? Correct. There is no documented evidence of formal rulebook changes or official referee or judge training changes directly caused by Mike Tyson's ear-biting incident. All right, moving on to the next one. So right now at this moment, Explainer Boxing is down 1. I'm up 1, so it's 1-0 for factual boxing knowledge.
Paul Williams and his height. Paul Williams was a tall guy from South Carolina.
My father knew Paul Williams when his coach. They would come down and get some training, and sometimes good guy, he's in South Carolina.
Really tall for a boxer in his division. He stood 6'2", which is considerably huge for a welterweight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you heard that right. A 6'2" fighter competing against guys usually much shorter and stockier, and that's where things started to get a little tricky. In the welterweight division, which has a weight limit of 147 pounds or 66.7 kilograms, most fighters just didn't have the reach or height to match Paul. His long arms and tall frame gave him a serious advantage.
Well, of course, Sergio Martinez knocked him the hell out.
From way outside the normal
range. Don't get me
range.
wrong, Paul is a great champion, and the reason he had to stop fighting is because he got in a horrible motorcycle accident.
And he didn't stop throwing. His pressure and volume were overwhelming, and to many fans, it just didn't feel fair. Now, let's be clear, because even if Paul didn't break any rules and did everything by the book, what he did do was expose a flaw in the system. There's
no flaw in the system.
Matches are fought by weight, but there are no rules around height or reach advantages, and that's...
Yeah, and there shouldn't be, because what are you going to do, right? Weight is an easy way, because there didn't used to be weight limits in boxing way back in the day. They created weight limits to make it a little bit more fair, but that's it. Do you need all the juniors and supers in between? I don't think you do. I am really old school in the sense I think we should go back to 8 weight divisions and 1 champion per weight division, 1 recognized champion. So whether or not we decide it's going to be the NBA, like how it was back in the day when Muhammad Ali fought, or if it's the WBC. And no matter what group you go with, it's going to be corrupt a little bit, because whenever you localize power, or centralize power, better said, there creates corruption, all right? There's no flaw or chink in the system, because Tommy Hearns was like 6'1", welterweight, and didn't make him just invincible.
Where he had a major advantage. Because of this, some fighters started avoiding him. Promoters struggled to find opponents who were willing to take the risk, and that's when people in the boxing world started saying,
it can be hard to get fights, yes.
Maybe we need to rethink how we match fighters. Ideas like rehydration limits and even bringing back same-day weigh-ins were thrown around. Basically, ways to prevent super tall or naturally big fighters from cutting down just to dominate smaller ones in lower divisions, but let's be real, it wasn't Paul's fault. He didn't cheat. His height, reach, and insane work ethic were all natural. He trained hard, made weight, and fought fairly. Still, just by being who he was, Paul Williams made people question if the system was truly fair for everyone, and quietly made the sport take a hard look at its own rules. Antonio Margarito and...
Alright, so we stop right there. Quietly made the sport take a hard look at its own rules. Full stop. But okay, so this video is called Every Professional Boxer Who Had Rules Made to Stop Them. Not had people look harder at the rules. Also, too, if you go through, because I don't remember serious boxing people talking about this at all. And this is when I was getting into boxing, was when Paul Williams was a champion. All right, so I went up, again, just to chat GBT it. To date, no credible boxing analyst, journalist, or commission have publicly speculated that rules should be changed because of Paul Williams. At least not in any reputable publications or interviews. All right. So am I going to say no boxing person ever said this? No. But, where was it probably said a lot? Fan discussions on boxing forums. So fanboys talking about it, like Reddit, boxing scene, and Sherdog. Misunderstandings or casual commentary about his unusual size for the welterweight division. People saying they should have height or reach limits, which boxing does not and likely never will. All right? Thank goodness. All right, so right now, if this was a competition, Boxing Truth is 2-0. Antonio Margarito.
And the loaded gloves scandal. Antonio Margarito was a tough, no-nonsense Mexican fighter, known for his iron chin and nonstop
Besides the nonsense of loading his gloves up. That was nonsense.
Pressure. He held world titles in the welterweight division and built a reputation as the kind of guy who just wore his opponents down with ease. But in 2009, everything took a dramatic turn, not just for him personally, but for the entire sport of boxing. Right before his highly anticipated fight with Shane Mosley, his trainer, Nazim Richardson, asked to inspect Margarito's hand wraps. That simple request ended up changing everything.
Which, before this, coaches could, generally, unless it was some podunk show, go and inspect and watch the other person rap. Like, it's absolutely something coaches did. That's why Nassim did it.
Inside the wraps, they found something hard, like a plaster-like substance tucked under the gauze. It was shocking. To many, it looked like someone was trying to turn Margarito's fists into weapons. An investigation was launched immediately by the California State Athletic Commission. What they discovered confirmed everyone's worst fears. Margarito's trainer had inserted plaster of Paris into the wraps, a substance that, when it mixes with sweat, hardens into something close to cement. If it hadn't been caught, Margarito would have entered the ring with practically loaded gloves.
Yep.
That's not just against the rules, but incredible.
And Shane Mosley beat the living hell out of him.
Dangerous. It could have seriously injured or even killed another fighter. Hence, when the news broke out, fans, fighters, and officials across the sport were outraged. So what happened next was that Margarito was suspended for a full year, but even after the
he should have never been allowed to come back, period.
suspension ended, things were never the same. His reputation was shattered, and many fighters didn't want to face him. The boxing community viewed him with deep mistrust. He went from being a world champion to someone whose name was tied to one of the biggest scandals in modern boxing. But the scandal didn't just stop with a suspension. It led to actual change. Boxing commissions across the United States updated and tightened their rules for hand wrapping. Trainers now had to follow stricter procedures, and officials became much more involved in pre-fight inspections.
All right, so trainers had to follow stricter procedures. It made it uniform that you had corners. I guess you asked corners if they wanted to go send someone to watch someone else wrap the hands. That's all it did. But I'll tell you, on the local small circuits with pro fights, that still doesn't happen. So, and it didn't change, from my understanding, any actual rules. It might have changed it in California specifically, where the opposing corner can go in and look and view the wraps. Yes, in nearly all major jurisdictions and sanctioning bodies, the presence of a representative from the opposing corner during hand wrap is now standard and required procedure for professional boxing matches. So I guess the option. And that's it. All right. So right now, Explainer Boxing got one. One out of three. So it's 2-1 right now.
Jack Johnson and the color bar. Jack Johnson was the first black man to win the World Heavyweight Boxing title, and when he claimed that crown in 1908, it shook the world of boxing in a major way. At that time, a lot of people, especially those in power, were deeply uncomfortable with the idea of a black man standing at the very top of the sport, but that didn't stop Johnson. He kept winning, even against top white boxers, and that only made his critics more upset. Rather than give deserving black fighters...
It's interesting how they do a picture of Johnson laying on the ground for... It's a bad... Is this whole thing done with ChatGPT or something or whatever?
Winning, even against top white boxers, and that only made his critics more upset. Rather than give deserving black fighters a fair shot, the people controlling boxing events started doing something sly. They simply avoided them. They weren't openly saying no black boxers allowed, but it was clear that title opportunities went only to white fighters, no matter how much a black fighter had earned the chance. This unfair treatment wasn't just about what Johnson did in the ring, it had a lot to do with who he was outside of it too. Johnson had a bold personality. He didn't play the quiet, humble role that society expected from black men at the time. He lived loudly and confidently, which upset even more people. So for years after Johnson became champion, black fighters were basically frozen out of the big picture. It didn't matter how talented they were or how many fights they'd won. Being black meant you likely wouldn't get a title shot. Sadly, this discrimination became the norm in boxing for a very long time, and things didn't start shifting until another powerful figure in Joe Louis came along and slowly changed.
That's where Joe Louis, before Jackie Robinson, really broke the color barrier, and a lot of people don't talk about that. Joe was the first time that you had a black athlete, and you had the whole United States of America get behind that black athlete when he rematched with Max Schmeling. Schmeling was representing Germany, of course, and that was a great unifying time. Joe helped unify the country, and the IRS did not treat him right.
Johnson battled not only opponents, but also the society that tried to hold him back. And even with all the obstacles, his name still stands tall in both.
That's like when he was in Australia and he beat Tommy Burns. They shut off the cameras when he was, getting him out of there.
Boxing and history, remembered as a true pioneer who broke barriers and refused to be ignored. Ray Mancini.
Okay, now, stop right there. We'll give Boxing Explainer that one. Even though no official rules were changed, it definitely was kind of an unspoken rule, like a literal barrier, which is why you saw no black guys challenging for the heavyweight title there for quite a long time. And Johnson got hit with the, whatever it was called, like the Mann Act or whatever it was, transporting a woman across state lines for immoral purposes. And he wasn't exonerated of that or pardoned of that until I think like late 20-teens when Donald Trump pardoned him.
Mancini and the fight that
we'll make it a what is it? Is it 2-2 right now? 2-2. All right, well, it's even now.
Shortened championship rounds. Ray Mancini was a rising star in the early 1980s. He became the WBA lightweight champion in 1982 and quickly became a fan favorite. But one tragic night changed his life. On November 13, 1982, Mancini defended his title against a young South Korean boxer named Duk-Koo Kim. It was a tough, grueling fight that pushed both fighters to the absolute limit. Back then, world championship fights were 15 rounds long, and this one went deep. In the 14th round, Mancini landed a series of hard punches that knocked Kim down. Kim got up, but the fight was stopped shortly after. Moments later, he collapsed in the ring and was rushed to the hospital. Tragically, 4 days later, Kim passed away due to severe brain injuries he had suffered during the fight. This horrible event sent shockwaves through the entire boxing world. Everyone from fans and...
It's a great documentary about that. I think it's called The Good Son. And Mancini meets Kim's son, who was in his mother at that time. Was unborn. He had an unborn child at that time, and then the child was born after Kim passed. Tough time. And, of course, the referee also committed suicide as well later. I'm not sure if it was actually because of that, but, it was definitely a horrible, horrible time.
Officials were shaken by what happened. As a result, big changes came quickly. The WBC was the first major organization to take action, reducing championship fights from 15 rounds to 12 in an effort to protect fighters from serious harm. The WBA and IBF followed soon after with the same change.
And that's where those changes came a little bit later. So I think the last 15-round fight, if I remember when I looked at it, it was the late 80s.
The idea behind this move was simple. Shorter fights could lower the risk of extreme head trauma, especially during those fights.
But with a lot of the major production, so it was over after that.
Final few rounds when fighters are the most exhausted and vulnerable. As for Mancini, he was never quite the same after that night. He continued to fight, but emotionally he carried the weight of that tragedy with him. He never...
Same thing with Sugar Ray Robinson when he killed Jimmy Doyle. A lot of people say it wasn't the same after that either, you know, because, again, this is a brutal sport, but it is a sport. 2-3. Oh, yeah, so beating me out. 2-3. Oh, it's getting dangerous. Might lose this one. Getting worried. All right, so let's go to the next one.
Andrew Golota and the low blow scandal. Andrew Golota was a powerful Polish heavyweight standing tall with the size, skills, and presence to beat anyone. But Golota became known for something completely different. His focus on keeping his punches legal, or rather his repeated failure to do so. In 1996, Golota faced Riddick Bowe, a former heavyweight champion. The fight was supposed to be Golota's big moment, and in many ways it was, but for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, he was beating him.
Golota was actually winning the fight. He was outboxing Bowe and landing solid shots. However, he started hitting below the belt. Not once or twice, but repeatedly. The referee kept warning him, but Golota just wouldn't stop, and in round 7, after multiple low blows, the referee had no choice but to disqualify Golota, even though he was clearly ahead on the scorecards. What followed was complete chaos. Fans in the crowd stormed the ring, chairs flew, and people fought inside Madison Square Garden. It became one of the wildest and most infamous scenes in boxing history. A few months later, they had a rematch, and guess what? Golota did the exact same thing. Again, he was winning, and again, he threw...
They even put, like, shorts on a heavy bag for him so that he would not hit below the shorts, but he still couldn't help but do it.
illegal low blows, and again, he got disqualified. Because of these two wild fights, the sport had to respond. New rules and stronger penalties were introduced for intentional fouls, especially low blows.
Okay, so new rules were brought in because of this fight. Okay, so I asked ChatGPT, again, not that ChatGPT is the source of all information, but it does a good job of crawling the internet. Were any rules changed because of the Andrew Golota fight with Bowe? It says yes. Andrew Golota's repeated low blows in his infamous fight, blah, 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 did influence boxing practices. All right. So again, blah, 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 blah. I asked for it to compare. And again, that's where I feel like that whole video we're watching was made with AI, because it's not only when you have some boxing knowledge and experience and you go a little bit deeper into it, do you have the full answer. Okay. So a referee commentator on Ring TV said, after Golota, refs were quicker with DQ trigger, especially in fights with a foul-prone rep. All right? Again, nothing was changed. Rule language unchanged. Everything unchanged. Nothing was different. Nothing. Okay? So, you did think I was losing, but we're getting back in the winning circle at, I believe it's 3-3 now. 3-3.
Golota's repeated low blows were not just strange incidents. They caused a real change in how fouls were handled in big matches.
A real change? No.
Sugar Ray Leonard and the 10-point judging system. Sugar Ray Leonard was a legendary boxer, no doubt about it, as he won world titles in 5 different weight classes, which is incredibly impressive in its own right. Now, during the late 1970s and 80s, Leonard wasn't just winning fights. He was becoming one of the biggest stars in boxing, taking down major names like Thomas Hearns, Roberto Duran, and Marvin Hagler. But what made Leonard stand out wasn't just the belts he collected. It was also the way his fights highlighted a serious problem in the sport, and it was
Shuri Leonard's fights did not highlight a major problem in the sport.
How boxing matches were judged. You see, back then, judging wasn't standardized. Different states had their own systems, and many decisions were based on an overall impression of the fight rather than clear round-by-round scoring.
Okay, from my understanding, and from a little bit of research, the numbers were different, meaning it wasn't 10 and loser gets 9, and if there's knockdown, it's 8. It was a 5-point must system, or it was just rounds. So it was like 6 to 6 or whatever, 5 or 6 to 4, 6 rounds to 4 rounds. You won. That's what it was. They didn't have specific numbers, but the criteria was the same.
This often led to results that felt unfair or downright.
He has a Muay Thai fight there. Again, this whole video is done with AI.
A key example came during Leonard's 1981 fight with Thomas Hearns. Leonard was trailing on points for much of the fight, but staged a strong comeback in the later rounds and stopped Hearns.
So he said this is a key example. So this is a key example where Leonard knocks him out.
Hearns. While Leonard won, the way the scoring was handled upset fans, not because...
The way the scoring was handled upset fans. So Leonard was behind, and he came back to knock out Hearns. And the way the scoring was handled upset fans. Well, this scoring of this fight, I looked it up, was under the 10-point must system. So, like, yes, around this time, it did become more unified because of it being on TV, all these fights being on TV and things like that. So, therefore, if you were, like, in one state or jurisdiction having a 5-point must system or just, like, a round number versus another number of rounds won, was confusing, so it became more solidified. But it wasn't because of Sugar Ray Leonard. And it wasn't because of this fight. Again, nowadays with all the crap people talk about where they're like, I thought so-and-so got robbed. Those are all fights where no one got stopped. Okay, the critique of Leonard is not about whether it's a 10-point must system or not. It was, are the punches that are getting scored landing or not? Right? And is it you winning the last part of the round, meaning you're winning the whole round in its totality? And that's just something as far as impressions go, but it's completely irrelevant to what he's talking about.
Discussions about judging reform. One major rule change that came from it was the broader and more consistent use of the 10-point must system, where the winner of each round gets 10 points and the loser gets 9 or lower. This helped make scoring more transparent and easier to understand round by round.
As far as numbers, yes.
Leonard's 1987 win over Marvin Hagler added more fuel to the debate. It was a close and highly controversial decision, and it
so it was already widely adopted at this time.
Forced boxing officials and fans to take an even harder look at how fights were scored. In response, boxing commissions across the sport began applying the 10-point must system more seriously and uniformly, aiming to bring fairness and structure to judging. So while Leonard was known for his incredible skill in the ring, his career also played a big part in changing how the sport made decisions.
No, not at all.
Making sure that wins and losses were judged more clearly and more fairly. Muhammad Ali and the rule-changing strategy. Muhammad Ali was the man who floated like a butterfly and stung like a bee in boxing. Fans didn't just love watching him fight. They loved watching him. He was a show all by himself. The movement, the talk, the rhythm, it was pure magic in the ring. But there was more to Ali than just flair. One of the things that really threw people off was how he would sometimes lean back on the ropes and let his opponents punch him. It sounds
like he did that a couple times, but famously in one fight.
Right? Punch after punch, Ali would just block, lean, smile, and soak it all in.
And also, this is when he got old, too. He didn't do this when he was younger. And he was older and damaged. That's why he was doing it. And there was controversy about that. Like, why the hell are we letting this guy fight?
Players were confused about whether he was hurt or tired. No, Ali was thinking 2 steps ahead. He was saving his energy and letting the other guy burn himself out. It was part of a brilliant tactic, what we now call the famous rope-a-dope. But not everyone loved it. Some fans thought it looked lazy, and judges weren't sure how to score it. Should they reward the smart defense or penalize the lack of aggression? The boxing rulebook didn't exactly cover what to do when a fighter looks passive but is actually controlling the fight.
Yeah, it does, actually.
And then there was the hugging. Ali, being smart and strategic, knew how to clinch, holding his opponents when things got heated to slow them down or mess with their rhythm. Again, it frustrated both the audience and officials. They had to go back to the drawing board and clarify the rules. What counts in a fight? Is it just punches thrown? Is it how tired you make your opponent? Or is it about controlling the pace, even if it doesn't look aggressive? Thanks to Ali, rulemakers had to tighten things up. They gave referees clearer instructions on when to step in and break clinches.
It depends on the referee's discretion. Nothing changed. Excessive clinching was illegal then, is illegal now.
Scoring guidelines were updated to better evaluate strategy versus raw instructions on when to step in.
Let's get that one.
Raw aggression and Ali break clinches. Scoring guidelines were updated to better evaluate strategy versus raw.
Okay, so scoring guidelines were changed, updated to.
And Ali didn't
take into account strategy versus raw aggression.
Just changed the sport with his fists. He changed it with his mind. His clever tactics made the people running the sport realize that boxing isn't just about brute force, it's about intelligence, patience, and control.
All right, so for you guys that don't really know, or maybe don't remember, let's talk about the 10-point must system. So, the Association of Boxing Commissions. And it's always been like this, guys. It has not changed. The numbers of things have changed and whatever, All right? You have clean punching. That is number one. Number one. Before Ali, during Ali, after Ali. That's number one. Number two, effective aggression. All right? So are you being effectively aggressive? Now, this is where people like, who's that guy that doesn't know much about boxing or nothing about boxing? Skip, whatever, with the Stephen A. Smith. So that guy Skip that's on there that really hated Mayweather or whatever. Pacquiao came forward, and the guy coming forward is winning. If it's effective. What does effective mean? It means you're landing clean punches while you're being aggressive. All right? So the boxer who aggressively pursues the opponent while landing clean shots. See, there's a subtext. All right? Ring generalship. The ability to control the pace, distance, and positioning of the fight. All right? That's third, though. That's third. All right? So if you're losing this, then this comes into being important. All right? But these are paramount. All right? And then the least priority is defense. It's important, but it's defense. All right, and that's it. Boom. That's how it rolls. So number one, clean, effective punching, effective aggressiveness, and ring generalship. All right. So when we tack it up at the end, let's do the final score and see who won. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5-3, Boxing Truth wins out. I win out. And Explainer Boxing does whatever Explainer Boxer does. Again, the reason I'm making this video is I don't want people walking around saying Andrew Golota changed boxing, changed the rules of boxing. I don't want people walking around saying Paul Williams. I mean, all respect in the world to Mr. Williams, but he didn't change boxing. He's a world champion. Massive respect for that. But don't get it muddled. Don't mix it all up. Sugar Ray Leonard, great legend, all-time great. He didn't change the scoring system. Muhammad Ali, a lot of people think he's the greatest. He's definitely one of the greatest. He didn't change the sport that way. Actually, think the things that changed because of him were regulations for fighters' health and things like that, to make sure what happened to him didn't happen to others. And the sport did get safer because I would argue because of the influence of the horrible things that happened to him and him fighting on way too long and having people around him that didn't really care. A lot of people around him that didn't really care and used him for money. And that's where you had that situation where you had Angela Dundee in the corner arguing with the rest of the corner, with the rest of Ali's corner, saying, I'm the chief second. I stopped the fight. No one else wanted to stop that fight with Ali when he was literally had Parkinson's in the ring and he was shot. But Angela Dundee was ready to, because he cared, at least a good amount. All right, and then Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson didn't change any rules in boxing. Again, he's a legend. He didn't change any rules. All right, that wraps it up, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. Please, if I'm wrong on anything, feel free to drop a comment below. We'll love the discussion. I'm not acting like I'm the arbiter of truth, but this is what I know from my experience with boxing. All right, guys. Have a great day.